Good morning, friends. Hey, one of the questions that I get pretty frequently is what type of top coat or varnish do I use over my project? And I'm going to go over quite a few of these, but for the sake of what I do normally, which is decoupage, I do just want to start out telling you what the best products are to use for decoupage. So I'll make this as quick and hopefully interesting as I can, since these are just varnishes. And I'm going to show you first. This is something that I use quite often, and it's called Liquitex Matte Varnish. This is an acrylic product. So on that table that I did, which now has over 1.5 million views, thank you very much for that, guys. I used this type of a varnish because I wasn't going to be using that table. It was strictly for decorative purposes. So I think I put 1 or 2 coats on, and there's something that I want to mention about chalk paint. That table was done using chalk paint and decoupage over the chalk paint. And a lot of times people will ask me, can I use the wax over decoupage? And you cannot. It's almost like wiping oil over a piece of plastic. It will just sit there, it won't absorb. It's perfect for the chalk paint. So what I recommend is, if you'd like to go over the areas of some product, some piece that you're doing, say it's a box and you're just decoupaging the top but chalk painting the sides and the bottom, you can use the wax that they recommend for chalk paint on any areas that you haven't decoupaged, and then you don't need a top coat. You use the wax in lieu of a top coat. And I use this one because I do this on any items that I want to maintain a vintage look to them. I make sure it's a matte varnish, which means there is no shine. This is water-based and it works perfectly over acrylics. So for that table, I used this particular top coat. Now I did another table that I actually use quite often, and I'll show you that one and which top coat I used over that. And this next top coat that I'm showing you is going to the opposite extreme, where this has no shine, no gloss. This other one is as rich of a gloss as you can get. It's also the most protective top coat you can use. It's actually used on kitchen counters, bathroom counters, floors, cement floors, in garages, so it is meant to take a serious beating. It's probably the strongest top coat. And by the way, that would be a 2-part resin. And this next piece that I'm going to show you, I made a video about this and I showed how to use the resin. Now you can get an idea here from this little bit of gloss from this fake candle. Well, there's a little bit of an echo up here. And from the lighting, you can see this rich, deep gloss. When I use this 2-part resin, a lot of times people will ask me how I got the glass coating over the surface, or if I had the glass coating cut and measured just to go over this piece. So this is for, let's say you're refinishing a table, whether it's decoupage, chalk paint, acrylic paint, you can use this 2-part resin over that, and this will take the heat, this will take the water, anything that drips on it gets wiped right off, and that is what the 2-part resin is for. If you decide you want to refinish that table that you have, I have a couple of videos showing you how to do that, and this will withstand everything. It takes such a beating and you'll be really happy with it. For the most part, you just need 1 coat and it lasts forever. Now I want to go on to this triple thick, which is also like the 2-part resin, only available in a very, very rich high gloss. This is probably more for everyday use. I would say that this is the opposite of the first varnish that I showed you, the Liquitex matte varnish, because that is flat and there is no shine on it. This has a very thick, rich coating. I love to use it on glass because you want glass to maintain the look of glass. It protects all of your work, and you can use it over decoupage and acrylic, anything acrylic. And another thing that it does, it works as a glue. It's a little hard to see the glitter on here, but it works as a glue. You would apply the triple thick, and by the way, you have to make sure you have to use a paintbrush like this, an artist's brush, as opposed to a sponge brush. It says on the directions that you cannot use a sponge brush, and when you do, the sponge brush will start to come apart and get messed up in it will mess up your piece. But it says right on the label not to do that. It also tells you once you apply it, you don't want to keep applying and applying and brushing and brushing. It will also level out. You just want to add a coat on and make sure that it's covering. Use it in very, very bright light. Make sure that it's covering your whole surface, and then when you're done, as soon as it's done, it doesn't even, you want to make sure it's wet, as a matter of fact, you would sprinkle some glitter on here. I have very, very fine glitter. Can you see that? I have very fine glitter on here. Anyway, this, by the way, is over some of the Martha Stewart multi-surface paint, where you put it in the oven or you let it cure for 28 days. That makes it waterproof. It can handle a whole lot. These are just decorative, and they sit up on a shelf in the upstairs bedroom just for decorative purposes, so I don't have to worry too much about them getting banged around. But it's still nice to know that this product works very well as a top coat or a varnish on most decoupage projects. Now, there are several sprays, as a matter of fact. The triple thick comes in a spray, and it's a general rule of thumb when you're using any spray, you do not want to try to achieve the results that you want in one coat. You want to spray a very light coat first, and when it dries, go back and spray a very light coat second. So it's better to build the levels with this, and that's all spray paints. I just apply a light coat first, let it dry, and then apply a second or third coat. You'll achieve that rich, deep, professional look. Now, there are other varnishes out there which I want to address. If you see something that says acrylic on it, you're pretty set to use that on your decoupage projects, because the decoupage glues are made to work with acrylics. And so acrylic with acrylic is always fine. So just say you run out of top coat and you run to the hardware store and you're like, what can I use? Can I use this over decoupage? The hardware store, 9 times out of 10, they don't even know what decoupage is, and I don't blame them. It's a hardware store. Some of the art stores don't even know what it is. So you want to know ahead of time. As long as you go in and you see that it says it's acrylic over acrylic, you're fine with that. You can also, however, use a shellac. This even says that it's great for hobbies, crafts, toys, things like that. The difference with the shellac needs to be applied in thinner coats, so you need more coats but thinner coats, and it's made with a denatured alcohol as opposed to water. I'm not wild about this because it scratches pretty easily, and especially after you've already added 3 or 4 coats, to then see that it's scratched just because someone picked it up wrong. It gives a beautiful shine, a nice finish, but unless something is just sitting in the corner, not going to be touched. Like if no one's going to pick something up or use it, you can still go with the shellac. By the way, all of the sprays need to be used either outdoors or in a garage, someplace where you have proper ventilation, and they need to be in a room temperature environment in order to dry or degas. So you'd want to put them in a room, probably in a closed box or something. They will still dry, but the gases will stay inside of that box rather than be released out into the room or the environment where you are. So another reason I'm not really wild about using the shellac. And shellac is not as protective as the varnish is. Varnish is actually better for outdoors also, which takes me to my next and very important spray, which you can also get in the paint-on form or the spray form. This is called Spar Varnish, and when we are working on anything to go outside, whether that's furniture, I did a table out on my front porch that I decoupaged it with a map, and I used the Spar Varnish over it. That was a few years ago. Here's how the Spar Varnish is holding up on the table out here on the porch. You can see that beautiful glow in the sunlight, but later on in the day the direct sun will be coming in here, which is what it's been doing for years, and it really provides a beautiful coverage on an outdoor piece of furniture. This actually has a UV protectant in it, and it can take the extreme temperatures because the table stays out there in the winter when it can get down to 0 or below. And it also is out there right now, and we're looking at a 100-degree day today. Poor New Jersey, we're getting it all this year. So this is also a good product to use on planters. So if you've got a terracotta pot, the very first thing I recommend you do is get either a product like this, which is a clay pot sealer. You know what, this is really just any old spray that you can spray around the inside of the pot. It's probably going to leave a glossy shine. But the reason you want to do that, even more so than on the outside, is because when you put a live plant inside a terracotta pot and you water it, that terracotta pot is meant to absorb the water. It pulls it to the outside, and I learned this the hard way. It will remove your decoupage work. So the way to avoid that is you spray the whole inside with either a clay pot sealer, or you can use any type of glaze that you want around the inside. Just spray about 2 or 3 coats so that it protects it from any of that moisture going to the outside and ruining your work. But once your work is done, then, because you're probably going to put it outside, you want to use, and there are different brands. There are different brands that make the Spar Varnish. You can find this in any hardware store now. Obviously, it's called Spar Varnish. I believe Spar is a part of a boat, and they used to use this, or they named it that because this would just take all of the elements. So the Spar Varnish is perfect for when you're working on terracotta planters also. And I would put about, like, at least 2 coats on the outside. You really don't need more than that. And I'm outside. That was a planter that I did a while ago. I think that was a recent video I did, but I used the Spar Varnish over that so that this could stay outside and not be harmed by the sun, the sun or the rain or moisture, the heat, the cold. And the last 2 that I want to address, polyacrylic versus polyurethane. I always recommend you go with the polyacrylic. You can use the spray or you can use the paint on. This is a water-based product. It dries a lot faster than if you use the polyurethane, which tends to be an oil-based. It is, you can get water-based, but this is very high in the toxic, they're called VOCs. The smell of it, it's really strong. It takes a little while longer to dry. It does provide better, longer protection. So that makes this good for floors and things like that. And you do need to put a couple of coats on. It takes a lot longer to dry between coats. But for our purposes with the decoupage, unless you're decoupaging a floor, I would stick with the polyacrylic The polyacrylic can also handle heat. So if you wanted to put this over a table that you've decoupaged, this will provide some protection, and it can handle the heat if you put a hot teacup or a hot plate over it. And oh, one other really important thing between these two is the polyurethane can and will yellow over time. You do not want the type of yellow that this turns to. It's a very dingy, unattractive yellow. Now, if you're using this over wood, you really wouldn't notice that, and it just provides a nice richness over wood. Not when you're working with decoupage. You wouldn't want a piece like this, like this bottle in particular started out as pink. If I used the varnish and it started to turn this dingy color, it would ruin the color of this pink. It would kind of turn into a not attractive orangish color, not look well with these colors and images. So that's the biggest difference between the polyacrylic and the polyurethane. The polyacrylic will not yellow. So guys, that covers, I think, all of our top coats and finishes. I suggest though that mainly for decoupage, you stick with the triple thick if you want a nice clear high gloss. You can also use a matte spray finish or a paint-on finish. If you need something that needs protection though, say you're working on furniture, you want to go with the polyacrylic. And if you want to really give something a professional deep shine, you would go with the 2-part resin. And for the outside projects, you definitely want to use the Spar Varnish. So that's our video on what you can use over decoupage, what you want to use. And by the way, some decoupage mediums say can be used as a top coat and a base coat. I honestly, as far as the top coat goes, did you know that with even nail polish, a base coat and a top coat are two totally different solvents? They're meant to do two totally different things. If you're selling your work, if you want your work to be professional, if you want it to last, I would definitely go with a top coat or a varnish, even though your decoupage medium says also works as a top coat. They also say that about nail polishes, works as a base and a top coat. It's not the right way to go. So that's our video for this week, my friends. I hope that I was helpful, and I hope that you could take some tips away from this, or you can save this or share it so that you know to come back to it the next time you're doing a project and you say, wait, what top coat was I supposed to use over this? So guys, thanks so much for subscribing. And I will see you guys next week with another video. As you've noticed, I'm posting some of my videos of acrylic pours, and I'm doing some resin in the background. I will be adding to my Etsy store and tell you guys when I am ready to open that up. I only have a couple of things there right now. So thanks again, my friends. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.